Welcome to Exploring Quality in Family Childcare, Promoting Friendship Skills. And today we are talking about early friendships. My name is Grace Eilers. I am the Family Childcare Content Specialist with Satellite, and we will hear from 5 different Satellite educators as we move along throughout our hour together today. And we're going to begin by placing this concept in a few different standards, as we typically do with our Exploring Quality series, a few different standards of high quality early care and education. The first being Satellite's accreditation standards. And in section 4, supporting children's development, it states that the educator actively promotes social skills and positive relationships among children. And the educator helps each child find positive ways to interact with others and supports children in developing friendships. So we're going to talk about all of these pieces today, in particular, how to support these positive play behaviors that lead to friendships and how you can be more intentional in your environment and throughout your day to provide more opportunity for those peer interactions. This also shows up in the Youngstar criteria under developmentally appropriate environments. And Youngstar is Wisconsin Quality Rating and Improvement System. And it says that staff should educators must promote positive relationships in their program. And finally, here we see it reflected in the Wisconsin Model Early Learning Standards, where they are encouraging adults to help children use the skills they have to develop friendships. So the example they give here is when a child plays with others successfully, acknowledge it by saying, "You are sharing the trucks today and being good friends." So today we are here to think about friendships, think more critically about why we value them and the importance that they have in children's lives. So to begin, our opening question today is to get you thinking about the topic of friendship and how you would define it in this moment. How would you describe it? What is friendship? What does friendship mean to you? There is no one right answer to this question, so we would love to hear from you through the chat. Chiquita said, someone who you can trust. Mary, being kind to others. Confident, someone you can turn to. Thanks, Nicole. Lisa said, friendship is companionship, trustworthy. Safety, says Chiquita. Tina says, being kind and loyal. Jenna, relying on one another. Julia says, a welcoming person, someone understanding. The idea of friendship is something that's present in all cultures, but what friendship means, what it looks like, how valued it is, that differs across cultures. So there is variability in the cultural beliefs and values that are placed on friendship. In Western culture, for example, we place a lot of value on friendships, and that'll come into play. I have a Winnie the Pooh quote for you today to start us off. A day without a friend is like a pot without a single drop of honey left inside. So Pooh is speaking in metaphors, as he often does, and is essentially saying that life feels empty and lonely without friends and close companions. And as so many of you shared, someone who you can trust, someone who is loyal, someone you can turn to in tough situations. And now we're going to talk about, because we know that there is some differences across culture, even though friendship is present in all cultures, there are some core components that we can see, that we find across cultures. And those are these 3 things here. So Ashforty and Lieberman, they're researchers that they outline these 3 core components of friendship. These must be present. So 1, it must be reciprocal, meaning there is that back and forth exchange and effort to maintain the relationships on both sides. It must be pleasurable, or it must bring joy, laughter, comfort, etc., etc. And that does not mean that it always has to be pleasurable. As many of us know, even as adults, we get upset with our closest friends sometimes. And finally, it must be voluntary. So both parties are choosing to be friends on their own accord. So when we think about the basics, these are those core components of what makes a friend across cultures. And then a lot of cultural beliefs come into play on the expectations and the value um, and I guess how valued friendships are. So now we're going to start at the beginning because we're talking a lot about what a friendship looks like for us as adults. We're going to start at the beginning here. And friendship development begins in infancy. And it's you, the adults, the caregivers in the infant's life. You serve as a model for how relationships can be rewarding. So infants then learn, okay, I'm going to seek out interactions and closeness with others because it is rewarding. And infants are very aware of others. As you all know, they are very keen observers and they often imitate what others are doing. So you can see that reflected here. Some of those components reflected here in this image on the left of this infant who just wants to be close and observe the older children in play. Traditional friendship skills really begin to emerge in toddlerhood as toddlers begin to choose preferred playmates to play alongside one another in a parallel play. So that's where children are engaged in the same activity alongside each other rather than with each other. So you can see that reflected here in this middle image. These two toddlers they're clearly using the same materials, but they're not yet working toward a shared goal. And then friendships really blossom in the preschool years, as all of you see every day, where children really begin to learn that friendship is voluntary and fleeting. So it can change day to day. And like in the image on the right here, you can see these two children are engaged in cooperative play. One child is holding the bucket while the other child is manipulating something inside of it. They clearly have some sort of plan. And you're going to notice friendships emerging when children have opportunities, like in each of these images here, for child-directed play. So we're going to touch on this more later, but having a mixed age group is going to help facilitate these skills, and you will see these skills at an earlier age thanks to the older children in the group. So childhood friendships, like we said, they develop during play. And there are some core features of childhood friendships that we're going to go over. The first one is proximity. So that's pretty simple. This is who is nearby that I can play with? Who do I have access to as a playmate? So like in Alexis's group in the left image here, this will be the children in your program. The second core component, this core feature of childhood friendships, is our pro-social interactions. So those include behaviors like helping, comforting, and sharing. So you can see that reflected in the middle image here, that these children are clearly splitting up. They're sharing materials, the wooden figurines, to play, either with each other or alongside each other. And then similarity, which refers to who has similar interests to me in this moment? Who has play compatibility with me? So you'll often see children grouping together who have similar interests in a certain type of play. So for example, as in the image on the right here, the similar interest in this moment would be music making. So as you saw from a lot of the images that we've seen so far, we're going to be talking a lot about play because that is where friendships begin to emerge and solidify. And research like Coloz and colleagues in 2017 affirmed that it's children's play behavior that really impacts their ability to make friends and be accepted by peers. So that is that children who display more positive play interactions during that play behavior, they're more likely to establish friendships than children who display more disruptive or disconnected play behaviors. So we're now going to talk through and we're going to think about what do we mean when we say play interaction, play disruption, play disconnection. And these three dimensions, they're taken straight from the Penn Interactive Peer Play Scale, which was developed in 1995 and has been studied in cultures across the world and has very similar findings. This tool has been used and confirmed in research with a variety of languages, ethnicities, race, and socioeconomic background as well. So we're going to briefly look at the different behaviors that support friendship development. And again, this is taken directly from the Penn Interactive Peer Play Scale. But it's very important to note that this scale is for research purposes only. It is not to be used as an assessment of individual children. Rather, for the purposes that we're using it for today, we're just going to look at trends, something to think about. These are the behaviors that we see that support friendship development over and over again, have been positively associated with children's friendship skills and their peer acceptance. So things like helping other children, sharing toys with others, helping to settle peer conflicts. I won't read all of them from each dimension. Encouraging others to join in play or comforting others when hurt. Another one is showing creativity in making up play stories and activities. So it's important to note that the behaviors outlined that we're going to go through, these are for preschool age children. We would not be expecting infants and toddlers to exhibit most of these skills. But it's important to keep in mind as you help guide and support young children, infants and toddlers, in eventually reaching these skills of helping and comforting others. All right, the play disruption dimension of the scale says, okay, these behaviors interfere with play interaction and therefore children's friendship development with their peers. So these are things like demanding to be in charge, tattling, destroying or grabbing others' things, crying or whining, disrupting the play of others, or being disruptive during transitions. These are the behaviors that interfere with children's ability to make and maintain friends. For the play disconnection dimension of the scale, these behaviors hinder friendship development because essentially of just non-participation. Children are not practicing engaging in play with their peers. So, for example, hovering outside of a playgroup, being withdrawn, wandering, someone who refuses to play when invited, or is maybe confused in play. Those are some of the examples on this scale. And I also recognize that for some children with disabilities or diverse needs, you may see more play disruption and play disconnection behavior. So, for example, children with autism often exhibit more play disconnection, like maybe that withdrawn behavior, than children without autism do. So please put a pin in that. We're going to come back to it later on today. All right, we are now going to set up the importance of focusing on friendship skills. Why is this so important to focus on friendship in early childhood? And humans, we are innately social creatures, okay? Our success as a human population, working and living in communities, has been dependent on our ability to socialize and connect with people who are outside of our kinship group or say our family. So friendlessness, having no friends, it activates something very deep and ancient, this ancient need, and it's going to in turn contribute to feelings of loneliness, poor self-esteem, even anxiety and depression, and that can begin even in childhood. And because of this, friendships have this substantial effect on mental health, and particularly during adolescence. So the skills required to make and maintain friendships, those begin developing in early childhood. And as you can see, like in the images here, those start during play. So now we're going to hear from Michelle Coker, owner of Scribble and Giggles Family Childcare, located in Neenah. And Michelle's going to talk about how she supports children's friendship skills.
For me, myself, I usually try to praise, obviously model that behavior and praise them whenever I see them acting kind or, being kind with their friends. I also just make sure I use kind and gentle words with them, and make sure I'm looking right at them when I'm talking with them. So I feel like that kind of shows a little bit of friendship between me and the children, and just so that they can see that that it's good to be gentle and use kind words and things like that. I try to, enforce or like encourage cooperative play with each other. So a lot of the times, I'll call it teamwork or something like that with the kids, oh, look at, you're doing such good job. You guys are working together as a team. And a big example of that is I think they do such a good, it's so cute. They do such a good job when nap time is over, they'll put their cots away together, and like one will be carrying one side of the cot and the other will carry the other side of the cot. One will walk backwards while the other one's walking forward and saying, okay, let's bring it to where it's supposed to go. And that's really cute. I feel like I feel like they do a good job with, that teamwork and building those skills. I like to read books with them a lot. We'll do like the one book that I always like to bring out, like especially when we like talk about friendship, like I'm gonna like talk to them about, okay, this is how we be friends. Um, I'll read The Rainbow Fish, where the rainbow fish goes around and he gives his scales to everybody and shows that, and I think that just shows in sharing with other people and, making sure I ask those questions after story time to, just see if they understood, like, do you think the rainbow fish was happy or sad? When he was sharing his scales, or was he a little bit of both? Or so I like to do that too. And then there's all kinds of games, that we'll play, like just regular board games, or I feel like Duck Duck Goose is a really good one for kids. Ring Around Rosie, they love to do that one together too, and I feel like that also encourages friendship skills. When I talk with the kids, like if someone's tied or if I'm tied up in doing something with one kiddo, another kiddo might come up to me and say, oh, well, can you help me with this? And I'll be like, oh, so-and-so is really, really good at doing this. Maybe you could go ask them for some help first and then, see if they can help you. And then you'll have what you need. And so that's another thing that I really like to do with them.
So Michelle mentioned so many of the strategies that we're going to come back to later today, like modeling friendship skills, discussing it with children, and the big one that I'm going to play off right now is turning children toward one another. So as children grow, we know that they begin to rely less and less on adults and more on friends to work through, or peers to work through problems just in their day-to-day life. And these friendships, especially when children enter school, they are vital to their school adjustment, which is really important for their ability to learn and to be successful. And because of this pattern that emerges, strong friendships act as a protective factor throughout life. And essentially, what that means is that having friends to turn to when you are stressed is going to help protect you from the ongoing feelings of stress and therefore the negative health effects of chronic stress. And this is even more pronounced in societies that place a lot of value on friendships. So, the more often that you can turn children toward each other and help them work through problems or communicate their needs, you are supporting their ability to keep and maintain friendships later down the road, which we know influences our mental health and helps act as this buffer for those negative health effects of chronic stress. As many of you mentioned in What is Friendship, having someone to turn to when you are stressed, someone who won't judge you, someone who can help you, creating that strong social network for children. So I'm going to talk about the main mechanism in which friendships does this. And there is this important hormone that mediates our social interactions, and it's called beta endorphin. And what beta endorphins do, they're released by your pituitary gland in your brain, and it acts as a neurotransmitter. And what it does is it goes in and it reduces your body's stress response. So it helps regulate your heart rate, your blood pressure, helps get your digestion going, your breathing. And beta endorphins also have a special ability where they can go in and they can reduce pain in the body and increase pain tolerance. Now, again, and pain includes physical pain and emotional pain. Weight for weight, scientists say that beta endorphins are 20 to 30 times more powerful than morphine. And this is what's being released when we are interacting with friends. Now, it's different than other types of relationships. For example, for us adults, beta endorphins are released, but to a lesser extent when we're interacting with romantic partners. You're going to see more of that oxytocin, more of that dopamine. This is similar for children with a parent or caregiver. You're going to see more of that oxytocin being released than the beta endorphins. So this is something that scientists are saying is pretty unique to friendships. So how does this all connect? Why is this so important? Research on other primates, our close genetic cousins, it shows that when you go in and you artificially turn off your brain's receptors, your brain's ability to take in and process beta endorphins and use it, when you turn that off, all primates want to do is social grooming. This is a primate's main way of building social bonds and trust, building friendships and relationships among members of the group. So this suggests that our body's need for beta endorphins compels us to interact with friends. And interestingly, you may be wondering, well, how does this play a role for say, individuals with autism? Individuals with autism have more beta endorphins in their body at any given point. So that may explain why some children with autism are less motivated to engage with peers as often. So this distinction, you're going to see this is going to be more pronounced after puberty, but you're still going to see this difference in early childhood. We're going to talk about now two different actions that help boost social bonds for us humans. So it's a little different than social grooming, like our primate genetic cousins. We're going to talk about behavioral mimicry and interpersonal synchrony. Behavioral mimicry is imitation. It is imitating a behavior after you witness the behavior. So like in the images here, you can see on the left, this toddler comes up, observes the school-age child writing with chalk on the playset, and then also draws with chalk. I know that you see this all day long. Interpersonal synchrony is similar, but there's a very critical difference. Interpersonal synchrony is done in lockstep at the same time. So examples of this would be like clapping to a beat, clapping on beat, I guess, clapping on beat to a song together, or maybe doing the same hand motions. Both of these increase social bonding and trust, but interpersonal synchrony, which is something that we generally need to help facilitate in young children, that has been experimentally shown to increase prosocial behaviors among the people who participate in it. This has been shown with infants, toddlers, and preschoolers. Those who did something in lockstep with others were found to be significantly more likely to help a member of the group in need than children who did not have that experience. So this is saying that there's something special about doing the same movements in time with another person that helps you feel connected to them. And we're going to bring this up later on in our how to do this section. We're just going to talk about supporting that togetherness. So as with every other aspect of development, children, they learn best through mixed age groupings, where you have older children who can model new skills, practice leadership, and the younger children can then learn those new skills. We're going to hear from other satellite educators speak more about the importance of this. But as you can see in both images here, the younger child in each scenario probably would not have been compelled to engage in this level of pretend play if it weren't for the support of the older child. So now we're going to hear from Marilee Hani, owner of Sishu Family Childcare in Appleton.
What I try to build with them is really a sense of community. And so we do that in several different ways. And a lot of it is, I feel like my job is to facilitate their interactions, but I don't want to be guiding their actions or really be in their space. I want to give them the freedom to play, but also the tools for that they need for if there's conflicts or anything else like that. Um, so how we do that is I use some of the ideas of conscious discipline, like if there's an issue and they come over, oh, they come, Marilee, he did this. And it's like, well, you know, I didn't do that. Like that person did. So let's go talk to that person and tell them, like, okay, um, don't take my toy. You can have it after I'm done and things like that. So I try to give them the words to be able to solve their own problems and then the tools too. So we have various timers that they can use that are big visual timers, like 3 minute, 5 minutes. So they know that they go over and they're like, I'm flipping the timer. It's my turn when it's done. And like nobody questions it. They all just are like, yep, my turn's over. The timer ended. And that helps them really get that sense of seeing like that it's not forever, that they have to wait. And we have one day a week where they can bring a toy from home to like when we do a letter day. And so they bring something from home and they know that they're always excited to see what everyone else brought. And they also understand that part of bringing it is they have to share. And for that, it's if they don't want to share their toy, then we say, okay, that's fine. Let's just put it to the side then. And so then they have to decide that balance like, well, if I want to keep it only for me, now it's on the side. But if I want to turn, I have to also let someone have a turn. And that also they really latch onto really quickly. And sometimes they do decide, I don't want to share my toy. So I'm going to just keep it by my bag and I'll get it later. And that way it gives them the choice. I always want them to have a choice in what they're doing. So it's if there's several of a toy, like the other day, the kids were saying, oh, that, he has, too many cars and I don't have any. And so we, talk to them like, okay, can we give one in first? They're like, no. And it's like, okay, well, how many do you have? And they're like, oh, I have three. And it's like, how many does he have? none. And it's like, okay, well, would you like to give him one car or two cars? And they're like, well, I'll give him one, you know. And so they kind of balance which choice do they want to make. And and so we and give them that time too to like kind of process it. And like they're like, no, I want all the cars. And we talk about, well, what if they had all the cars and you didn't have any? So I try to like help build that empathy of like thinking about, well, how would it feel if I was that person? And with the last few years, the toddlers I've had, they've had an older brother who was very doting over them. Two different families, and it was like the nicest big brother you ever saw for both of them. And so, like, just from that, the other kids saw, like, oh, this older kid is always, you know, treating the younger one this way. And so the other kids just pick up on that from each other. And so they also are like very understanding of the younger kids too. Um, and we tried to talk about like, okay, well, if the little one knocked over your tower, what could we do? You know, like maybe we should help him build a tower over there that he can knock over. And so try to give them the ideas of like, well, this is my space, but how can I work with that person? And by just helping with some of those steps in the beginning, they teach that to each other. They work through most of their things with each other, and they aren't always having to come to me for the solutions. They can work out those solutions themselves. And for meals, we have like the plates we have two of each color. So they always love to see who's matching who. And if there's by having two of each, it's not like there's a huge fight over who gets which color because two people are going to get it. And if they got that at breakfast, somebody else can have it at lunch. And they always love to just see, oh, I'm matching this person. And the kids also get to help pass out the plates and cups. And so we've now had to, you know, divide it up so that we can have like, all right, you can do cups this morning and you can do plates. And then at lunch, it's a different too. And they just really love getting to have that independence. And another thing we do is like this year, one of our things, which I often do, is that one of their projects each week is a take home book. So whatever we're kind of talking about that week, we have a little book they take home. And I try to incorporate photos in that. So if we're learning about our body, it might be a little book that's just head, shoulders, knees, and toes. And so it has like a picture of first fat kids, and then there's a picture of the group where it's like everybody's head. And so they also love to be able to look at books each week that shows all their friends. If it last week we were talking about time and like the sequence of the day, and so each kid had a different page of what they were doing in the day, and they really love like little kids love being able to see themselves, and that they also love then getting to see their friends and show their family like, oh, this is this person. And the families love it because then they also have a face to put with a name that they've been hearing. So so yeah, we do a lot of photo based things too that they can take home and look at.
Marilee gave us so many examples of ways to support children in making friends and interacting with peers in a positive way. So I'm going to expand on that a little bit. There's this cycle that happens, as you heard Marilee refer to it, that eventually children are able to teach themselves. There's this cycle that happens when children interact with peers and they begin developing friendships where the interactions that children are receiving in those relationships are promoting further social development. So we know from the Penn Interactive Peer Play Scale that there are some skills that are required to enter and sustain cooperative play with another child. So there is like what I like to call a threshold of social competence that allows for children to enter into these situations and play. So these building blocks are where you as an educator can step in and help facilitate and build for young children so that all young children can experience the joy and the developmental benefits of developing friendships. So as you can see in this graphic here, older children are particularly helpful in kickstarting this process. We're going to talk more about this in a little bit. So now we've gotten to our final section for this afternoon, how to promote friendship skills. And I'm going to turn it over to you. If you're able, we would love to hear from you. Think about how you're currently doing this in your program. How do you support children's friendship skills? I saw that Joy said that They also do what Marilee was talking about in having children pass out the different colored cups and plates. Jenna says, encouraging play. Lisa says sharing and taking turns. Mary also says by encouraging sharing and taking turns. Cynthia says talking about friendship during circle time. So yeah, discussing it. Tina says modeling among teachers. Barbara says encouraging grace for others. I see Chiquita sharing is caring. Ooh, Brenda does role playing. Kids always love that. Mary says reading books about sharing. So we're now going to hear from Geneva Felder, owner of Felder's Family Childcare in Milwaukee. And she's going to answer the same question. How do you support children's friendship skills?
Firstly, I start off by modeling positive social behaviors with the children. Model being respectful through respectful communication, showing kindness, also showing cooperation. And the biggest thing is being a positive leader for the kids to look up to. I also teach them directly through social skills by showing them how to share, how to implement turn taking, using kind words and listening and expressing their feelings through thoughtful manners, also through circle times and discussions with the kids, role playing in the dramatic play area. I also use social emotional charts with the kids, encouraging just a cooperative, fun and nice play amongst the kids. I show that we do books that shows friendships and emotions, and just being there showing the kids positivity.
So Geneva is clearly very aware of the impact that she has on children's friendship skills through things like modeling, through helping them implement that turn taking, through talking about friendships during a book reading, to learning how to be respectful to others. And all of these experiences are helping children enter and sustain play with others. And so many of the play interaction skills we explored earlier have to do with helping or comforting others, sharing resources, or children's confidence in their abilities. So here are some ideas to help support children with those limited social skills. And this will come up out to you in a follow-up email, but just as a couple examples. Modeling for a child, as we've heard already before. Would you like help rebuilding your tower? Or acknowledging, recognizing that pro-social behavior. You are both are working together to finish the puzzle. Helping narrate for children who have limited social skills. Like, it looks like Isaiah wants to play with you. He's dancing to the music you're making with the maracas. A couple of other quick examples. I see you both found a spot in the cozy corner. What will you do together? So that would be something like you're encouraging that cooperative play, or parallel play. Discussing it in books. That was already mentioned a couple of times. And then supporting children through that conflict. And I'm going to hold that one because I know that our next couple of videos are going to talk a lot about this. And we're now going to hear from Maria Laura Asio Yaso, owner of My Little World in Madison.
Me, a very important point in the social emotional development of kids. It's very important. These kids need to learn how to relate to other people in a correct way, respectfully, with empathy, by being collaborative, and we can help them to learn to have long-standing friendships, significant friendships, and those friendships that we can say are good. we play a very important role in the kids' development. First, by modeling them, they see how we have relationships to other people, to parents. Apart from that, they learn from what we can teach them so they can have good relationships. Why do I say this? Because, for example, or if we see that there's a conflict, we can help them. We can first let them try to sort the conflict out. And if it's necessary, we can intervene, we can interfere and guide them only to guide them so they can learn to sort their issues out. Something else that we can do with them is, well, in fact, all of this has an impact so that they can have a good relationship or a good friendship. Something else that's very important for us is that kids need to learn first to recognize their feelings, how they react, and they need to learn to show empathy when they need a, a kid that's suffering, that's sad, or probably he's in a bad mood or he's upset. As kids, they can go and get closer, talk to that kid, interfere. I mean, support that kid in that moment, being able to hug him if they feel it, if they need it, and little by little they'll start to learn how to have a good relationship, to foster good relationships. One thing that's important is when they are here all together, we try to have activities, group activities for those that have the same interests so they can have the chance while free play or during art time, during those times, we can help them foster group work so that they can work in something they share an interest on. For example, if they are playing dentist, they can work together, they can be together, and they can be developing play as well as social skills and strengthening their friendship among them all.
So Maria Laura spoke a lot about modeling for children, also waiting to just step right in, solve children's problems, social problems, but rather let them practice working it out on their own. And among the many other strategies that Maria Laura spoke about, she spoke about doing activities together to bring children together. And this is what we're going to think about next. You can support togetherness in a variety of ways. So, thinking back to that interpersonal synchrony of doing something, performing synchronous actions, that has been experimentally shown to increase prosocial behaviors for individuals within the group. So, examples of this would be doing yoga together. Again, clapping along to the same beat. And these are ways that you can help boost that togetherness in your program. So, a lot of this is going to be facilitated by music, which you can see an example of in the image on the right here. And not only that, but thinking about your environment and setting up spaces to encourage that peer interaction through either parallel or cooperative play. So that would be like the image here on the left. Sarah could have just placed one stool in that area, but instead she decided to place two to help encourage that peer interaction. So all these little subtle things that you can do that many of you might be doing in your program already are helping to promote children's feelings of togetherness and their social bonds within the group. Now we're going to hear from Patty Lopez, owner of Mis Primeros Pasos al Éxito. In English, that is My First Steps to Success.
Well, to me, empathy is very important. We have to show empathy. To foster friendships, we need to focus in environments in which interaction has to be emotional. We have to guide them in an enriching way. We have to apply strategies designed for kids to learn how to connect with other kids by practicing different activities, sorting problems out in a constructive way, implementing for example, strategies such as saying hello, hugging each other, asking how you're doing, uh, by showing empathy towards the kid that's crying, to show that you have feelings and that you care why the other person is sad. We need to focus on that and we let the kids um, feel empathy towards little kids or towards adults. It's important to always stimulate the kid to be grateful to any person, be the kid or an adult. If we foster kindness and gratefulness, we help them be able to get connected to humans, to animals. It's very important to have that connection among humans, among animals. So we have to foster an active listening in terms of learning. We use we can use different games to simulate empathy. We can work in different environments in which we can have puzzles, board games to teach them to wait for your turn. How are you feeling? Sometimes kids get frustrated because they want to go first. So we need to help them learn to be empathetic, that they can show their feelings at their moments to build a good friendship, because otherwise if we ignore the upset kid, it means that we are not empathetic. The collaborative activities, group work, teamwork is very important. Art activities, different dynamics that require that kids show effort to reach a common goal. Conflict resolutions should be learned as well. If there's a disagreement, we need to learn how to sort this out again with empathy. Again, if we use different books, we can use books to show different emotions, to validate emotions, different emotions of our peers. Diversity among cultures is very important. Also, we need to promote respectfulness towards each member so that each member can feel respected. Those emotions that you feel that you are being seen.
So Patty spoke a lot about empathy and the importance of that emotional literacy for young children. So, talking about feelings and encouraging children to notice their feelings of others, that's extremely important for her. So a few additional notes. We're wrapping up our time together. Just as a reminder, friendships, they must be voluntary and they must be reciprocal. So sometimes you're going to have a child ask another child, either verbally or non-verbally, this question: can I play with you? And that child is either going to respond with words or actions, may respond with a no. And you as an educator may need to support the child that receives the no for an answer. It is okay for children to decline play invitations. We want children to feel as though they can make decisions for themselves about how to spend their time. With that being said, it also can be an uncomfortable feeling, but it's a good feeling for a child to work through and to sit with when they're sitting with that rejection and doing it in an environment that is supportive. So in these moments, you may need to employ some of the skills that we've talked about of turning children toward maybe another child. Um, in these particular situations, younger children work very well because younger children are less choosy in their playmates, and they also very much look up to older children. So not only is this helpful for the older child, but the younger child is also receiving really valuable social information from the older. So just like in the images you see here, turning the older child in these scenarios particularly can be helpful for both parties. And finally, friendships and what children need from peers, they may look different among children. They may look different among children, especially with children with different abilities. So it's a misconception that, for example, children with autism, they don't want friends. It's rather, it may look differently or they may need extra support to enter and sustain play with others. And it also may always look different. It may always look like parallel play. So it's important to observe children who may lag behind in what we deem as like typical friendship development skills and say, okay, let me look. Is this child content? Does the child seem content playing alongside peers, or are they looking for support to enter into that cooperative play? So it may look differently for children with different abilities, and that's okay. It's important to keep in mind and I mean, that applies to all of developmental skills. You have the commonality piece of what is similar for children based on age. You have that individuality piece of what is this particular child showing you, and then the cultural piece of how are the cultural messages about friendships impacting children. So just wanted to make sure that we said that to end off our time together. I want to extend a big thank you to all of you today for showing up and participating in our event. I hope this was valuable to you. And then thank you to the 5 satellite educators who shared their wisdom with us on promoting friendship skills.